In the tech world, we call that market timing. I've been watching several automation companies that are prime for acquisition because they have solid technology but haven't figured out scalable business models yet. Robert chuckled and patted my hand condescendingly. That's sweet, Sarah, but we're talking about real money here. Millions of dollars in assets, not whatever little computer programs you work with. The dismissal stung, but what happened next broke something fundamental inside me. Michael, my husband, the man who was supposed to be my partner and advocate, actually laughed along with his uncle. "Sarah's got big dreams," Michael said, his tone affectionate but patronizing. "She's always talking about expanding her little business." Little business. The words echoed in my head for the rest of the evening. My little business had generated over $2 million in revenue the previous year. My little business employed 12 people and had contracts with Fortune 500 companies. My little business was preparing to launch an AI platform that would revolutionize small business operations across multiple industries. But to them, it would always be little. I would always be little. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted to talk about real money and strategic acquisitions, I would show them exactly what real money looked like. I would show them what happened when someone they considered insignificant decided to play their game with better resources, better strategy, and absolutely nothing left to lose. I started by doing what I did best, research and analysis. I spent the next 6 months quietly studying the Rodriguez Auto Group's financial structure, market position, and potential vulnerabilities. What I found was both fascinating and troubling. The family business was successful but outdated. Their inventory management systems were from the early 2000s. Their customer relationship management was handled through a combination of Excel spreadsheets and handwritten notes. Their online presence was minimal, and their digital marketing strategy was virtually non-existent. More importantly, they were heavily leveraged. The rapid expansion of the past decade had been financed through a complex web of loans and credit, lines that left them vulnerable to market fluctuations. The luxury car market was notoriously cyclical, and they had no diversification strategy if the economy took a downturn. But here's what made it perfect for my purposes. They were a family business that had never seriously considered outside investment or acquisition. They assumed they were untouchable, protected by legacy and local reputation. They had no idea how exposed they actually were. While they continued to treat me like Michael's charity case wife, I was building something they couldn't even comprehend. Chen Automation Solutions evolved into Chen Strategic Holdings, a private equity firm focused on acquiring and modernizing traditional businesses through technology integration. My initial success with automation consulting had generated enough capital to attract serious investors, and my track record of improving operational efficiency made me an attractive partner for major financial institutions. The first acquisition was a small chain of auto repair shops in Oregon. I bought them for $800,000, implemented my automation systems, and sold them 18 months later for $2.4 million. The second was a logistics company in Nevada that I purchased for $1.2 million and sold for $4 million after revolutionizing their routing and scheduling systems. Each success brought more opportunities, more investor interest, and more capital. Within 2 years, Chen Strategic Holdings had a portfolio worth over $50 million and the backing of some of the most powerful venture capital firms on the West Coast. But the Rodriguez family never asked about my frequent business trips to San Francisco and Los Angeles. They never wondered why I was constantly on conference calls or why venture capital firms were sending packages to our Phoenix address. Michael assumed I was just getting busier with consulting work, and I never corrected that assumption. The beautiful irony was that my success was built on exactly the kind of strategic thinking Uncle Robert had lectured me about that night at the country club. I was identifying undervalued assets, thinking several moves ahead, and executing acquisitions with precision and patience. I was playing chess while they were still playing checkers. Tonight's dinner represents the culmination of 3 years of careful planning and strategic positioning. The Rodriguez Auto Group is facing their most challenging quarter in a decade. Luxury car sales have declined due to economic uncertainty. Their aging customer base is being courted by newer, more tech-savvy competitors, and their operational inefficiencies are finally catching up with them. Last month, Uncle Robert quietly approached several potential investors about taking on additional partners to help modernize the business and weather the current market downturn. What he doesn't know is that one of those potential investors is a subsidiary of Chen Strategic Holdings, and we've been conducting due diligence on Rodriguez Auto Group for the past 8 weeks. What he really doesn't know is that tomorrow morning, my assistant David Park will be delivering acquisition papers that will give Chen Strategic Holdings controlling interest in Rodriguez Auto Group. The deal has been structured as a strategic partnership that will preserve family management roles while bringing in the capital and technological expertise needed to compete in the modern automotive retail market. In other words, the poor relative they've been patronizing for 8 years is about to become their boss. But as I sit here tonight, watching Aunt Patricia explain to the table why store-bought desserts would be perfectly fine for someone, in my situation, I'm not thinking about revenge or vindication. I'm thinking about visibility. For 8 years, I've been invisible at these gatherings, present but not seen, tolerated but not valued. Tomorrow, that changes. Tomorrow, they'll have to see me not as Michael's charity case wife, but as the strategic, business leader who holds the future of their family legacy in her hands. Tomorrow, they'll understand that underestimating someone can be the most expensive mistake you ever make. Jessica is telling a story about her latest shopping trip to Beverly Hills, gesturing with perfectly manicured nails while describing a handbag that costs more than most people's rent. Linda is nodding along, occasionally glancing at my simple black dress with the kind of subtle disapproval I've learned to recognize over the years. Michael is engaged in a conversation with his father about dealership performance metrics, completely oblivious to the undercurrent of condescension flowing around the table like an expensive wine. He's a good man, my husband, but he's never had to fight for respect or recognition. He's never had to prove himself worthy of basic consideration. The dessert course arrives, and alongside the restaurant's elaborate chocolate creation, my homemade pecan pie looks almost humble. Aunt Patricia makes another comment about homemade charm that makes several people chuckle, and I smile graciously while checking my phone. David has sent a single text message. Papers ready for morning delivery. Confirm location? I type back quickly. Confirmed. The Phoenician, private dining room, 9 a.m. sharp. Tomorrow morning, during the traditional family breakfast that concludes every Rodriguez gathering, David will arrive with documents that will transform everything: the acquisition papers, the strategic partnership agreement, and most importantly, the organizational chart that shows exactly who will be making the decisions about the future of Rodriguez Auto Group. But tonight, I'm still just Sarah, the poor relative who brings homemade dessert and wears dresses from Nordstrom Rack instead of designer boutiques. Tonight, I'm still invisible, still tolerated, still small in their eyes. And that's exactly where I need to be for this to work perfectly. The evening continues around me like a well-rehearsed play. Jessica complains about her personal trainer. Uncle Robert pontificates about market trends he doesn't fully understand. And Aunt Patricia makes increasingly pointed observations about people who don't contribute meaningfully to family traditions. Each comment, each dismissive glance, each patronizing smile is fuel for tomorrow's fire. They have no idea that the quiet woman at the end of the table, the one they've spent 8 years overlooking, is about to give them a masterclass in strategic business acquisition. The check arrives, and there's the usual awkward moment where everyone looks around to see who's paying. Michael reaches for his wallet, but his father waves him off with the kind of gesture that clearly communicates this is beyond our budget level. It's a small humiliation, but after 8 years, I barely feel it anymore. What I feel instead is anticipation. pure, electric anticipation for the moment when David walks into tomorrow's breakfast meeting and changes everything forever. As we gather our things to leave, Linda approaches me with her practiced smile and touches my arm gently. "Sarah, dear, the pie was lovely. So thoughtful of you to make something yourself." I thank her graciously, the same way I've thanked her for 8 years of backhanded compliments and subtle dismissals. But this time, there's something different in my smile. This time, I know exactly what tomorrow morning will bring. The valet brings our car around, a modest sedan that looks almost embarrassed next to the Mercedes and BMWs of the rest of the family. Michael tips the young man and helps me into the passenger seat, completely unaware that his wife owns the company that will soon own his family's entire business empire. As we drive back to our hotel through the glittering lights of Scottsdale, I watch the desert landscape pass by and think about transformation. About the moment when everything you thought you knew about someone turns out to be wrong. About the power of being underestimated by people who should know better. Tomorrow, the Rodriguez family will learn that the poor relative they've been patronizing for 8 years isn't poor at all. She's powerful, strategic, and absolutely done being invisible. Tomorrow, everything changes. The morning after that dinner, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our hotel suite, and for the first time in months, I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed: peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from avoiding conflict, but the deeper satisfaction that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you were meant to do. Michael was already in the shower, humming some tune I didn't recognize, completely oblivious to the fact that his wife had spent the previous evening calculating the exact leverage ratios that would make his family's business empire vulnerable to strategic acquisition. I poured coffee from the room service cart and opened my laptop to review the final details that would reshape everything. The Rodriguez family had no idea they were sitting on a gold mine of inefficiency. Over the past 18 months, I'd been quietly studying their operations through public records, industry reports, and the occasional casual conversation with Michael about his workday. What I discovered was both fascinating and deeply frustrating. Rodriguez Auto Group had 12 dealership locations across Arizona and Nevada, with annual revenues approaching $200 million. On paper, they looked successful, established, untouchable. But underneath the surface, they were hemorrhaging money through outdated systems, redundant processes, and a complete inability to adapt to digital transformation. Their inventory management alone was costing them approximately $3 million annually in holding costs and lost sales opportunities. They were ordering vehicles based on historical data from 2019, completely ignoring current market trends and consumer behavior analytics. Their customer relationship management consisted of a part-time employee maintaining spreadsheets that hadn't been updated since the Obama administration. But the real revelation came when I analyzed their debt structure. The rapid expansion of the past decade had been financed through a complex web of commercial loans, equipment financing, and revolving credit lines that left them incredibly vulnerable to interest rate fluctuations. They were paying approximately $2 million annually in unnecessary financing costs, simply because nobody had bothered to restructure their debt portfolio in over 8 years. It was like watching a chess master play against someone who had never learned that pawns could move 2 spaces on their first turn. The Rodriguez family had built something impressive through hard work and determination, but they were competing in a modern market with tools and strategies from a different era. The opportunity crystallized 6 months ago when Uncle Robert mentioned during a casual conversation that they were considering bringing in outside investors to help modernize their operations. He said it almost apologetically, as if admitting they needed help was somehow shameful for a family that had built their empire through stubborn independence. That's when I knew the time had come to stop being invisible and start being indispensable. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm 32 years old, And right now, I'm sitting at a mahogany table that probably costs more than most people's cars, watching my husband's family discuss me like I'm not even here. The private dining room at the Phoenician. Resort sparkles with crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows that frame the Arizona desert mountains. But all I can focus on is Aunt Patricia's voice cutting through the evening air like a blade. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I just think it's sweet that Sarah still brings homemade dessert, she says, gesturing toward the pecan pie I spent 3 hours perfecting yesterday. Store-bought would be perfectly fine for someone in her situation. The pause before situation hangs heavy, loaded with everything she's too polite to say outright, poor, struggling, not one of us. I take a sip of the Cabernet that Michael ordered without asking what I preferred and keep my expression neutral. After 8 years of marriage, I've perfected the art of invisible endurance at Rodriguez family gatherings. They see what they want to see. A girl from Portland who got lucky enough to marry into their world of luxury car dealerships and desert real estate investments. What they don't see is the laptop in my hotel room upstairs, where 3 different acquisition deals are waiting for my final approval. What they don't see is the phone that's been buzzing in my purse all evening with messages from venture capital firms wanting to discuss my next move. What they don't see is that their precious family empire, Rodriguez Auto Group, is about to have a very different kind of Thanksgiving. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me paint you the full picture of tonight's performance. The Phoenician's private dining room holds exactly 16 people comfortably, and tonight it's packed with 3 generations of Rodriguez success stories. Michael's father built the first dealership in 1987 with a small loan and a big dream. By the time I married Michael, they owned 12 locations across Arizona and Nevada, specializing in luxury vehicles that cost more than most people's annual salaries. I met Michael 8 years ago at a tech conference in Austin. I was there, presenting my breakthrough work in AI automation systems for small businesses, and he was attending as part of his MBA program, trying to modernize the family operations. He was different from his relatives, quieter, more thoughtful. When he asked me to dinner after my presentation, I actually said yes, because he was the first person all day who seemed genuinely interested in the technical aspects of my work, rather than just networking. Our courtship was a whirlwind of weekend. Trips between Portland and Phoenix, long phone calls about everything from artificial intelligence to classic cars, and the kind of connection that made me believe I'd found someone who truly saw me. Michael appreciated my mind, my ambition, my drive to build something meaningful in the tech world. At least, that's what I thought. The problem started almost immediately after our wedding. The Rodriguez family had very clear expectations about wives, and none of them involved running a consulting business from a home office or flying to client meetings in Seattle twice a month. Linda, Michael's mother, suggested I might be happier focusing on settling in to Phoenix life. Aunt Patricia wondered aloud why I needed to work when Michael's dealership salary was perfectly adequate for a young couple. But it was cousin Jessica who delivered the most cutting observation during our first Christmas as a married couple. We were opening gifts in Linda's sprawling Scottsdale home, surrounded by boxes from Neiman Marcus and Williams-Sonoma. When Jessica picked up the tablet I'd given Michael loaded with inventory management software I'd customized for the dealerships. "How thoughtful," she said, her voice dripping with the kind of sympathy usually reserved for charity cases. Sarah made something herself since she couldn't afford to buy something nice. The room went silent. Michael squeezed my hand but said nothing. I smiled and explained that the software could save the dealerships approximately $40,000 annually in efficiency improvements. But Jessica had already moved on to her next gift, a Rolex from her investment banker husband. That night, I cried in the shower of our hotel room while Michael slept peacefully, oblivious to the humiliation I'd just endured. The water ran hot against my face as I realized that no matter what I accomplished, no matter how successful my business became, I would always be the girl who couldn't afford the right gifts. But crying in hotel showers doesn't pay the bills or build companies. So I dried my tears, opened my laptop, and got back to work. My consulting firm, Chen Automation Solutions, started small. I helped local Portland businesses streamline their operations using AI and machine learning tools that were still relatively new to the market. My background in computer science from Oregon State, combined with my natural ability to understand complex business processes, made me exceptionally good at identifying inefficiencies and creating elegant solutions. The first year was brutal. I worked 16-hour days, lived on coffee and determination, and slowly built a client base that appreciated results over pedigree. While the Rodriguez family assumed I was playing with computers as a hobby, I was actually revolutionizing how small and medium businesses managed everything from inventory to customer service. By our third year of marriage, Chen Automation Solutions had grown into something much bigger than a consulting firm. We were developing proprietary software, licensing AI tools to major corporations, and I was being invited to speak at conferences across the country. But the Rodriguez family never asked about my work beyond polite inquiries about whether I was still doing the computer thing. The turning point came during a family dinner much like tonight's, but 3 years ago. We were celebrating Uncle Robert's birthday at their country club, and the conversation had turned to business acquisitions. Robert had just purchased a small RV dealership, and everyone was congratulating him on his strategic expansion. "The key," Robert explained, gesturing with his whiskey glass, "is identifying undervalued assets before anyone else realizes their potential. You have to think several moves ahead, like chess." I found myself leaning forward, genuinely interested in the conversation for the first time all evening. "That's fascinating," I said. The first step was establishing credibility within their industry without revealing my connection to the family. I arranged for Chen Strategic Holdings to sponsor a luxury automotive retail conference in Las Vegas, where I delivered a keynote presentation on technology integration in traditional sales environments. The audience included over 300 dealership owners and executives from across the Southwest, including several of the Rodriguez family's competitors. My presentation focused on case studies from my previous acquisitions, demonstrating how strategic technology implementation could increase revenue by 30 to 40% while reducing operational costs by up to 25%. I showed before and after metrics from dealerships I'd modernized, profit margins that had improved by millions of dollars, and customer satisfaction scores that had reached industry-leading levels. After the presentation, I was approached by 17 different dealership groups interested in partnerships or acquisitions. But the most interesting conversation came from a man named Frank Morrison, who owned a competing luxury dealership chain in Nevada. He mentioned that he'd heard the Rodriguez Group was quietly exploring strategic partnerships, and he wondered if I might be interested in conducting a preliminary assessment of their operations. I told him I'd consider it if the opportunity arose, all while knowing that Uncle Robert had already reached out to my firm through intermediaries, not realizing he was essentially asking his nephew's wife to evaluate his business for potential takeover. The due diligence process took 3 months and was conducted with surgical precision. My team analyzed every aspect of Rodriguez Auto Group's operations, from their real estate holdings to their employee retention rates. We studied their market position, their competitive advantages, and most importantly, their weaknesses. What we found exceeded even my most optimistic projections. The Rodriguez dealerships occupied prime real estate in rapidly gentrifying areas of Phoenix and Las Vegas. Their property values had appreciated by over 40% since the original purchases, creating approximately $30 million in unrealized equity that wasn't being leveraged for business expansion or debt restructuring. Their brand relationships with luxury manufacturers were solid, built on decades of reliable performance and community reputation. These partnerships included exclusive territory agreements that would be extremely difficult for competitors to replicate, creating a natural barrier to market entry that had significant strategic value. Most importantly, their customer base was incredibly loyal, but underserved. The Rodriguez dealerships had maintained relationships with high-net-worth individuals across the Southwest for over 20 years, but they had never implemented modern, customer relationship management systems that could maximize the lifetime value of these relationships. In other words, they had built something extraordinary and were systematically underutilizing its potential through outdated management practices and resistance to technological modernization. The acquisition strategy I developed was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than a hostile takeover that would destroy family relationships and community goodwill, I structured the deal as a strategic partnership that would preserve the Rodriguez name and family management structure while bringing in the capital and expertise necessary to unlock the business's full potential. Chen Strategic Holdings would acquire 65% controlling interest in Rodriguez Auto Group through a combination of cash investment and debt restructuring. The family would retain 35% ownership and continue managing day-to-day operations, but major strategic decisions would require approval from the new majority shareholder. The financial terms were actually quite generous. The Rodriguez family would receive immediate cash payments totaling $42 million, plus ongoing dividend distributions based on improved performance metrics. Their individual salaries would remain unchanged, but they would also receive performance bonuses tied to specific modernization milestones. More importantly, the deal included a comprehensive technology transformation plan that would modernize every aspect of their operations. Within 18 months, new inventory management systems, customer relationship platforms, digital marketing strategies, and employee training programs that would position Rodriguez Auto Group as the most technologically advanced dealership network in the Southwest. The beauty of the arrangement was that everyone would benefit. The Rodriguez family would maintain their legacy and see their business grow beyond anything they could achieve independently. Customers would receive better service through improved systems and processes. Employees would have access to better tools and training opportunities. And Chen Strategic Holdings would generate returns through operational improvements rather than cost-cutting or asset stripping. It was the kind of win-win scenario that business schools write case studies about, except for one small detail that made it absolutely perfect from my perspective. The Rodriguez family had spent 8 years treating me like I was too insignificant to matter, and now I was about to become the person who controlled their entire professional future. The irony was so exquisite it almost felt like poetic justice. But beyond the personal satisfaction, there was something deeper driving my decision to pursue this particular acquisition. For 8 years, I had watched the Rodriguez family operate with the kind of casual arrogance that comes from never having to prove yourself worthy of basic respect. They assumed their success was permanent, their position was secure, and their judgment was unquestionable. They had never learned the fundamental business lesson that complacency is the enemy of sustainability. They had never understood that, in a rapidly changing market, the companies that survive are the ones that adapt, not the ones that rely on past achievements to guarantee future success. I wanted to teach them that lesson not through destruction, but through transformation. I wanted to show them what was possible when traditional values were combined with modern strategies, when family legacy was enhanced rather than replaced by technological innovation. Most importantly, I wanted to demonstrate that the quiet woman they had dismissed as Michael's charity case wife was actually the strategic business leader they needed to secure their family's financial future for the next generation. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place 2 weeks ago when Uncle Robert's intermediary contacted Chen Strategic Holdings to schedule a formal presentation of our acquisition proposal. The meeting was set for this morning, the day after, the traditional family Thanksgiving dinner, in the same private dining room where they had spent years making me feel invisible. I had been planning this moment for 3 years, but the final details came together with the kind of precision that only happens when preparation meets opportunity. David Park, my assistant and the most competent project manager I'd ever worked with, had coordinated every aspect of the presentation. The legal documents, the financial projections, the implementation timeline, and most importantly, the dramatic timing that would maximize the psychological impact of the revelation. Michael had no idea what was coming. Over the past months, he had occasionally mentioned that his family was exploring strategic partnerships to help modernize their business, but he never connected that process to my frequent business trips or my late-night conference calls with investment bankers. This wasn't malicious on his part exactly. Michael genuinely loved me and respected my work, but he existed in a world where business and family operated in separate spheres. It had never occurred to him that his wife's consulting firm had evolved into a private equity powerhouse capable of acquiring established automotive retail operations. The night before the dinner, I had lain awake in our hotel bed, listening to Michael's steady breathing and thinking about transformation. Not just the business transformation that was about to reshape his family's company, but the personal transformation I had undergone over the past 3 years. 3 years ago, I had been genuinely hurt by their dismissiveness. Their casual cruelty had made me cry in hotel bathrooms and question my own worth. I had desperately wanted their approval, their recognition, their acceptance into their world of inherited privilege and automatic respect. But somewhere along the way, while I was building something they couldn't even imagine, I had stopped needing their validation. I had discovered that the only approval that mattered was my own, and the only recognition worth having was the kind that came from tangible achievement rather than social acceptance. The woman who had cried in the shower after Jessica's Christmas comment about homemade gifts was gone. In her place was someone who had learned to transform pain into power, dismissal into determination, and invisibility into strategic advantage. The morning of the acquisition presentation, I woke up feeling like I was about to take the most important test of my professional life. Not because I was nervous about the outcome, but because I was excited to demonstrate everything I had learned about strategic business leadership. David had arrived at the Phoenician at 7:30 in the morning to set up the presentation materials in the private dining room. The acquisition documents were organized in leather portfolios, each labeled with the name of a Rodriguez family member. The financial projections were loaded onto a tablet connected to the room's presentation system. The implementation timeline was printed on high-quality paper that conveyed the seriousness and professionalism of the proposal. But the most important element of the presentation wasn't the documents or the technology. It was the moment when the Rodriguez family would realize that the woman they had spent 8 years underestimating was actually the strategic business leader who held the key to their company's survival and growth. That moment was scheduled for 9 o'clock sharp, right after they finished their traditional family breakfast and gathered to hear Uncle Robert's presentation about the potential strategic partnership that would modernize Rodriguez Auto Group for the 21st century. What Uncle Robert didn't know was that the strategic partner he was about to introduce was already sitting at the breakfast table, quietly eating her scrambled eggs and listening to Aunt Patricia complain about the service at their country club. What none of them knew was that by 10 o'clock that morning, the family hierarchy they had taken for granted would be completely reorganized, with the poor relative at the very top of the organizational chart. The breakfast conversation followed its usual patterns. Linda discussed her upcoming charity luncheon, Jessica complained about her personal trainer, and Uncle Robert pontificated about market conditions he didn't fully understand. I sipped my coffee and responded to their polite inquiries about my computer work with the same gracious vagueness I had perfected over 8 years of family gatherings. But this time, there was electricity in the air that I don't think they could feel, but that was coursing through my veins like caffeine. This time, I knew that in exactly 47 minutes, David would walk through the dining room doors and change everything forever. This time, the invisible woman was about to become impossible to ignore. At 8:45 that morning, I excused myself from the breakfast table and walked to the ladies' room. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted 60 seconds of complete silence before the most important business presentation of my career. The marble countertops and gold fixtures of the Phoenician's restroom felt like the perfect backdrop for checking my reflection one final time before everything changed. The woman looking back at me in the mirror was someone I barely recognized, from 3 years ago. Same dark hair, same brown eyes, but there was something fundamentally different in my expression. Confidence, maybe. Or perhaps just the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing you're about to prove every doubter wrong in the most spectacular way possible. I touched up my lipstick, straightened my navy blazer, and walked back to the dining room where the Rodriguez family was finishing their coffee and preparing for Uncle Robert's mysterious business presentation. They had no idea that the strategic partner he was about to introduce had been sitting among them for the past hour, listening to Jessica complain about her yoga instructor, and Aunt Patricia criticize the hotel's housekeeping standards. David Park was already in position outside the dining room doors, checking his watch and reviewing the presentation materials one final time. At exactly 9 o'clock, he would enter with the kind of professional composure that commanded immediate attention, and the Rodriguez family would finally understand what strategic business leadership actually looked like. But first, they had to endure Uncle Robert's introduction, which promised to be a masterclass in unintentional irony. Robert stood at the head of the table, tapping his coffee cup with a silver spoon to get everyone's attention. The room fell, silent with the kind of respectful anticipation that families reserve for patriarchal pronouncements about money and legacy. "As you all know," Robert began, his voice carrying the weight of someone accustomed to being listened to, "Rodriguez Auto Group has been exploring strategic partnerships to help us modernize our operations and position the company for continued growth in an increasingly competitive market." I kept my expression neutral while internally marveling at his ability to make "we desperately need help because we're hemorrhaging money through outdated systems" sound like a carefully planned expansion strategy. After months of careful consideration and extensive due diligence, Robert continued, "We've identified a strategic partner whose expertise in technology integration and operational efficiency makes them the ideal choice to help us transition Rodriguez Auto Group into the digital age." Michael leaned forward with genuine interest, completely unaware that his wife had spent the previous evening reviewing the final financial projections for acquiring his family's business empire. Linda nodded approvingly, secure in her assumption that Robert's business acumen would protect the family's financial interests. Jessica looked bored, probably calculating how much her trust fund distributions might increase if the dealerships became more profitable. "The partnership we're proposing," Robert said, building toward his big reveal, "will bring in approximately $50 million in immediate capital investment, plus ongoing operational support that should increase our annual revenues by at least 30% within 2 years. Aunt Patricia actually gasped at the numbers, which was somewhat gratifying since she had spent years suggesting that anyone who worked for a living was somehow beneath the family's social standards. The idea that someone might invest $50 million in their little regional dealership operation was clearly beyond her comprehension. "Our new strategic partner," Robert announced with obvious pride, "is Chen Strategic Holdings, a private equity firm based in Portland with an exceptional track record of modernizing traditional businesses through technology integration." The silence that followed was exactly what I had anticipated. Confused glances, whispered conversations, and the gradual realization that none of them had ever heard of Chen Strategic Holdings, despite Uncle Robert's obvious enthusiasm for the partnership. Michael was the first to speak. "Chen Strategic Holdings," he repeated slowly, as if testing the words for familiarity. "That name sounds familiar somehow." I took a sip of my coffee and waited for the moment when the pieces would start falling into place. It wouldn't take long. Michael was actually quite intelligent when he focused, and the combination of Chen and Portland was too obvious to ignore indefinitely. "Their principal," Robert continued, consulting his notes, "is someone with extensive experience in automotive, retail operations, plus advanced expertise in artificial intelligence and business process automation. Exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need to compete with the Tesla dealerships and online automotive platforms that are disrupting our traditional sales models. Linda frowned slightly, clearly struggling to understand how anyone could disrupt something as established as luxury car sales. The Rodriguez family had operated under the assumption that wealthy customers would always prefer the personalized service and relationship building that came with traditional dealership experiences. What they didn't understand was that wealthy customers increasingly expected both personalized service and technological sophistication. They wanted to research vehicles online, configure options through mobile apps, and complete financing applications from their offices or homes. The dealerships that survived would be the ones that seamlessly integrated high-touch relationship management with high-tech convenience features. The partnership agreement, Robert explained, maintains family control over day-to-day operations, while bringing in the capital and expertise necessary for comprehensive modernization. We keep our name, our locations, our staff, and our customer relationships. But we gain access to cutting-edge technology platforms, advanced marketing strategies, and operational efficiency improvements that should transform our profitability within 18 months. Uncle Robert was doing an excellent job of presenting the acquisition as a partnership, which was exactly how I had structured the deal. The Rodriguez family would maintain their dignity and their sense of ownership, while Chen Strategic Holdings gained the controlling interest necessary to implement fundamental changes without interference from people who didn't understand modern business operations. "When do we meet this strategic partner?" Michael asked, and I could hear genuine curiosity in his voice. "I'd love to understand their vision for integrating technology into our sales processes." That was my cue to check my phone, where David had sent a text message confirming that he was ready to begin the presentation. I looked up from the screen and caught Robert's eye. "Actually," I said calmly, "your strategic partner is already here." The room went completely silent. Not the polite attention silence from Robert's introduction, but the profound quiet that occurs when people realize they're about to learn something that will change everything they thought they knew. Michael stared at me with the beginning of understanding dawning in his eyes. Linda looked confused, glancing around the room as if expecting someone to emerge from behind the curtains. Jessica put down her coffee cup with the careful precision of someone who suddenly needed to pay very close attention. But it was Aunt Patricia who spoke first, her voice sharp with the kind of disbelief that people experience when their fundamental assumptions about the world are challenged. "What do you mean already here?" she demanded. "Who exactly are you talking about?" I stood up slowly, smoothing my skirt and taking a moment to look at each family member individually. 8 years of dismissive comments, patronizing smiles, and casual cruelty had led to this moment, and I wanted to savor every second of their confusion before delivering the revelation that would reshape our relationship forever. "Chen Strategic Holdings," I said clearly, "is my company. I'm the principal Robert has been negotiating with for the past 4 months. I'm the strategic partner who's going to modernize Rodriguez Auto Group and position the company for sustained growth in the 21st century." The silence stretched for approximately 10 seconds, which felt like an eternity in a room full of people trying to process information that contradicted everything they believed about business, family, and the quiet woman they had systematically underestimated for nearly a decade. Michael was the first to find his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Sarah, you own a private equity firm?" "I built a private equity firm," I corrected gently. "Chen Strategic Holdings manages over $200 million in assets across multiple industries. We specialize in acquiring traditional businesses with strong fundamentals but outdated operational systems, then modernizing them through strategic technology integration." Linda's mouth opened and closed several times without producing any sound, like someone trying to speak underwater. The concept that her daughter-in-law, the woman she had spent years treating like an amusing charity case, could be the sophisticated, business leader her family desperately needed was clearly beyond her ability to process quickly. "But your little computer business," Jessica started, then trailed off as she realized how insulting that phrase sounded in the current context. "My little computer business," I said with a smile that I hoped conveyed gentle amusement rather than vindictive satisfaction, generated over $12 million in revenue last year and employs 43 people across 6 states. The consulting work was just the foundation for building something much larger. Uncle Robert was studying the legal documents in front of him with the expression of someone who had just realized he had been negotiating with his nephew's wife without knowing it. His face was cycling through confusion, embarrassment, and what looked like grudging respect for the complexity of the situation. "So, when you said you were interested in strategic partnerships," he asked slowly, "you were actually evaluating us for acquisition." "I was conducting due diligence on a potentially valuable investment opportunity," I replied. The fact that it happened to be my husband's family business made it more personally meaningful, but it didn't change the fundamental business analysis. Rodriguez Auto Group has exceptional potential that's being limited by operational inefficiencies and resistance to technological modernization. David chose that moment to knock on the dining room door, and I called for him to enter. He walked in carrying a leather briefcase and the kind of professional composure that immediately commanded respect from everyone in the room. Tall, impeccably dressed, and radiating the quiet confidence that comes from working with successful business leaders, David represented everything the Rodriguez family associated with serious money and strategic thinking. "Good morning," David said with a polite nod to the room. "I'm David Park, Senior Project Manager for Chen Strategic Holdings. I have the final partnership documents ready for review and signature, if everyone is prepared to proceed." The formal business language seemed to break through the family's shock and remind them that regardless of personal relationships, they were in the middle of a major financial transaction that required professional attention. Robert cleared his throat and attempted to regain control of the situation. "David, we weren't expecting. That is, we didn't realize that our strategic partner was someone you already knew?" David asked smoothly. "It's not uncommon in our industry. Family businesses often benefit from strategic partnerships with individuals who understand both the operational challenges and the emotional significance of maintaining family legacy." It was a diplomatic way of acknowledging the elephant in the room without making anyone feel foolish for not recognizing the obvious signs that had been in front of them for months. David opened his briefcase and began distributing leather portfolios to each family member. These contain the complete partnership agreement, including financial terms, operational responsibilities, and implementation timeline. Ms. Chen has structured the arrangement to preserve family management while providing the capital and expertise necessary for comprehensive modernization. I watched their faces as they opened the portfolios and saw the financial projections, organizational charts, and technology implementation plans that would transform Rodriguez Auto Group from a regional dealership network into a cutting-edge automotive retail operation. The numbers were impressive because they were realistic. I hadn't inflated projections to make the deal more attractive. Instead, I had identified specific operational improvements that would generate measurable returns within documented timeframes. Inventory management optimization would save approximately $2 million annually. Customer relationship management modernization would increase average transaction values by 15%. Digital marketing implementation would expand their customer base by 25% within 2 years. But the most important number was the one that represented their immediate cash payout. $42 million divided among family members based on their current ownership percentages, with Uncle Robert receiving the largest share as the principal owner and operational manager. Michael was staring at the organizational chart that showed his wife listed as chairman and chief executive officer of Rodriguez Auto Group, with his uncle retaining the title of president and general manager. It was a structure that preserved the family's operational control while giving Chen Strategic Holdings the authority to make strategic decisions about technology investments, market expansion, and financial management. Sarah, Michael said. Finally, his voice filled with something that might have been awe. You're going to be my boss. I'm going to be your strategic partner, I corrected. The goal isn't to replace family management, but to provide the resources and expertise that will help you compete with companies like Tesla and Carvana that are revolutionizing automotive retail through technology integration. Aunt Patricia was still staring at the financial projections as if they were written in a foreign language. You're saying you want to give us $42 million to modernize our computer systems? I'm saying I want to invest $50 million in comprehensive operational improvements that will increase the value of Rodriguez Auto Group by approximately $120 million over the next 5 years, I explained. The $42 million in immediate payouts is just the beginning. The real value creation comes from transforming the business into something that can compete effectively in a digital marketplace. David had connected his tablet to the room's presentation system and was displaying a timeline that showed the modernization process step by step. New inventory management systems would be implemented within 60 days. Customer relationship platforms would be operational within 90 days. Digital marketing campaigns would launch within 120 days. But the most impressive element of the presentation was the competitive analysis that showed exactly how far behind Rodriguez Auto Group had fallen compared to modernized dealerships in similar markets. Their current systems were costing them approximately $8 million annually in lost sales opportunities, operational inefficiencies, and customer retention failures. The choice you're facing, I said, looking around the table at faces that ranged from stunned to calculating, isn't between accepting our partnership or maintaining your independence. The choice is between modernizing your operations through strategic partnership or slowly losing market share to competitors who understand that automotive retail is becoming a technology business. It was a harsh assessment, but it was accurate. The Rodriguez family could continue operating with their current systems for another few years, but they would gradually lose customers to dealerships that offered more convenient purchasing experiences, better financing options, and superior customer service through integrated technology platforms. Or they could accept the partnership with Chen Strategic Holdings and transform Rodriguez Auto Group into the most technologically advanced dealership network in the Southwest, with the financial resources and operational expertise to expand into new markets and new revenue streams. The silence in the room was different now. Not the shocked quiet of people trying to process unexpected information, but the thoughtful pause of business leaders considering a major strategic decision. Uncle Robert was the first to speak, and his voice carried a tone of respect that I had never heard him use when addressing me before. Sarah, he said carefully, this is obviously a much more significant opportunity than we realized. But I have to ask, why us? With your resources and expertise, you could acquire any automotive retail operation in the country. Why did you choose to invest in Rodriguez Auto Group? It was an excellent question, and one that deserved a completely honest answer. Because you built something worth saving, I said simply. Rodriguez Auto Group has solid fundamentals, loyal customers, and a reputation for integrity that took decades to establish. Those assets are incredibly valuable, but they're being undermined by operational systems that haven't been updated since the Bush administration. I paused to look at Michael, whose expression suggested he was beginning to understand the full scope of what his wife had been building while he assumed she was just playing with computers. And because, I continued, I wanted to prove that strategic business partnerships can strengthen family enterprises rather than destroying them. Too many private equity firms acquire traditional businesses just to strip their assets and eliminate their workforce. I wanted to demonstrate that the right kind of strategic partnership can preserve everything that makes a family business special while adding the resources necessary to ensure its survival. It was true, but it wasn't the complete truth. The Complete truth was that I had also wanted to prove to myself that I could transform dismissal into respect, invisibility into indispensability, and years of casual cruelty into a position of strategic authority over people who had never bothered to see me as anything more than Michael's charity case wife. But that part of my motivation was personal, and this was a business presentation. The Rodriguez family needed to understand that accepting the partnership with Chen Strategic Holdings was the smartest financial decision they could make, regardless of family relationships or personal dynamics. David was already preparing the signature pages because he understood that momentum was critical in acquisition negotiations. Once people start seriously considering a major strategic partnership, you need to move quickly toward formal commitment before they have time to develop doubts or seek alternative options. If everyone is comfortable with the terms, David said professionally, we can execute the partnership agreements this morning and begin implementation planning immediately. The technology integration timeline is aggressive, but it's designed to position Rodriguez Auto Group as a market leader before your competitors realize what's happening. Uncle Robert looked around the table, making eye contact with each family member to gauge their level of comfort with moving forward. It was a democratic approach to decision-making that I respected, even though I knew the ultimate choice was his to make as the principal owner. I think we need to vote, he said finally. This affects everyone's financial future, so everyone should have input on whether we accept the partnership. It was the right approach, and it gave me the opportunity to see exactly where I stood with each member of the Rodriguez family, now that they understood I wasn't just Michael's wife, but the strategic business leader who could secure their financial future for the next generation. The vote was unanimous, but the conversation that followed revealed everything I needed to know about how fundamentally the power dynamics in this room had shifted in the span of 30 minutes. Linda was the first to sign the partnership documents, her signature flowing across the page with the kind of elegant precision that suggested she had spent years signing important papers. But as she handed the pen to Michael, she looked directly at me with an expression I had never seen before. "Sarah, dear," she said, and for the first time in 8 years, the word dear didn't sound condescending. "I owe you an apology. We all do." The room fell silent again, but this time it was the respectful quiet that occurs when someone is preparing to acknowledge a significant mistake. I had been anticipating this moment for months, but actually experiencing it was more emotionally complex than I had expected. "You don't owe me anything," I replied carefully. "Business is business, and family is family. What matters now is making sure Rodriguez Auto Group has the resources it needs to succeed in a changing market." But Linda shook her head, her perfectly styled silver hair catching the morning light streaming through the windows. "No, that's not quite right. We treated you like you were less than us, like your work didn't matter, like your contributions to our family weren't valuable. We were wrong, and we were unkind." Michael was staring at his mother with obvious surprise. In 8 years of marriage, I had never heard Linda Rodriguez admit to being wrong about anything, much less acknowledge that she had been unkind to someone she considered family. "The truth is," Linda continued, "we didn't understand what you were building because we didn't take the time to ask. We assumed that because you were quiet during family gatherings, you didn't have anything important to contribute. We were threatened by your intelligence and your independence, so we diminished both." Aunt Patricia was studying her hands with the kind of intense focus that suggested she was deeply uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Jessica was fidgeting with her jewelry, clearly struggling to process the idea that she had been systematically underestimating someone who was now in a position of authority over her family's financial future. But it was Uncle Robert who delivered the most significant acknowledgement of how completely the situation had changed. "Sarah," he said, his voice carrying a tone of professional respect that was entirely new. "I've been in business for over 30 years, and I've never seen anyone execute a strategic acquisition with this level of sophistication. The due diligence, The financial structuring, the operational planning. It's absolutely first-rate work. He paused to consult the implementation timeline that David had prepared, shaking his head with what appeared to be genuine admiration. You identified inefficiencies in our operations that I've been looking at for years without recognizing, Robert continued. The inventory management optimization alone is going to save us more money annually than I spend on my salary. How did... You know our systems were that problematic? It was a fair question, and one that deserved a detailed answer. For the first time since the revelation, I felt like I was being asked to explain my professional expertise rather than defend my personal worthiness. I spent 18 months analyzing your operations through public records, industry reports, and casual conversations with Michael about his workday, I explained. Your financial statements are filed with the state, your inventory turnover rates are tracked by manufacturer databases, and your customer satisfaction scores are published by industry associations. David opened his tablet and displayed a comprehensive analysis that showed exactly how Chen Strategic Holdings had evaluated Rodriguez Auto Group's performance relative to industry benchmarks. The data was presented with the kind of analytical rigor that demonstrated serious professional competence. The real insight came from understanding that your challenges weren't unique to Rodriguez Auto Group, I continued. Most family-owned dealerships are struggling with the same issues. Legacy systems that worked perfectly 20 years ago but can't handle modern consumer expectations. Inventory management based on historical data rather than predictive analytics. Customer relationship management that relies on personal relationships rather than systematic follow-up. I clicked to the next slide, which showed a comparison between Rodriguez Auto Group's performance metrics and those of dealerships that had undergone similar modernization processes. The opportunity wasn't just about fixing your specific problems, I said. It was about positioning Rodriguez Auto Group to take advantage of the market disruption that's affecting the entire automotive retail industry. While your competitors are struggling to adapt to digital transformation, you're going to be implementing cutting-edge systems that will make you more efficient, more profitable, and more responsive to customer needs. Michael was reviewing the customer relationship management proposal with the kind of focused attention that suggested he was finally understanding the full scope of what his wife had been building while he thought she was just consulting on small business automation projects. This customer retention program, he said, pointing to a specific section of the implementation plan, shows projected revenue increases of over $3 million annually. How is that possible? Currently, Rodriguez Auto Group sells approximately 40% of your customers only one vehicle during their entire relationship with your dealerships, I explained. The average luxury car buyer purchases a new vehicle every 4 years and spends approximately $200,000 on automotive purchases during their lifetime. David had prepared a detailed analysis of customer lifetime value that showed exactly how much revenue the Rodriguez dealerships were losing through inadequate follow-up and relationship management. The new customer relationship management system will track every customer interaction, send automated follow-up communications, and identify optimal timing for sales outreach based on individual purchase patterns, I continued. Instead of hoping that satisfied customers will remember to come back when they're ready for a new vehicle, you'll be proactively maintaining relationships that turn single transactions into decades-long partnerships. The financial projections were conservative but compelling. Even modest improvements in customer retention would generate millions of dollars in additional revenue, while the cost of implementing the new systems was less than what Rodriguez Auto Group currently spent on traditional advertising that produced minimal measurable results. But the most significant opportunity, I said, advancing to the final slide of the presentation, is positioning Rodriguez Auto Group as the premier destination for luxury electric vehicles in the Southwest. The room went completely silent. Electric vehicles were still a controversial topic in automotive retail, with many traditional dealers expressing skepticism about consumer demand and manufacturer support. Tesla has proven that there's substantial demand for luxury electric vehicles, I explained. But their direct sales model creates opportunities for traditional dealers who can offer superior customer service, comprehensive maintenance support, and established relationships with high-net-worth customers. David displayed market research showing that luxury electric vehicle sales were projected to increase by over 300% within 5 years, with the Southwest region leading national growth due to favorable climate conditions and state incentive programs. The partnership with Chen Strategic Holdings includes exclusive territory agreements with 3 luxury electric vehicle manufacturers who are seeking established dealership partners to compete with Tesla's direct sales approach, I continued. Rodriguez Auto Group will be the first traditional luxury dealer network in Arizona and Nevada to offer comprehensive electric vehicle sales, service, and charging infrastructure. Uncle Robert was studying the electric vehicle projections with the expression of someone who was beginning to understand that this partnership wasn't just about modernizing existing operations, but about positioning the company for an entirely new market opportunity. You're talking about transforming us from a traditional luxury car dealer into something completely different, he said slowly. I'm talking about evolution rather than revolution, I corrected. Rodriguez Auto Group already has the customer relationships, the service expertise, and the market reputation necessary to succeed in luxury electric vehicle sales. The partnership with Chen Strategic Holdings provides the capital and technology platform to make that transition seamlessly. The implementation timeline showed that electric vehicle sales could begin within 6 months, with full charging infrastructure installation completed within 1 year. The projected revenue from electric vehicle sales alone would justify the entire modernization investment. The beauty of this approach, I said, is that it preserves everything that makes Rodriguez Auto Group successful while adding revenue streams that didn't exist 5 years ago. Your customers still get the personalized service and relationship management they expect, but they also get access to cutting-edge technology and environmental sustainability options that Tesla customers can't find anywhere else. Jessica was the first family member to ask the question that I had been expecting since the beginning of the presentation. What happens to us? She asked bluntly. I mean, if you're now the majority owner and you're implementing all these changes, what happens to our roles in the company? It was a reasonable concern, and one that deserved a straightforward answer. Strategic partnerships often resulted in family members being pushed out of operational roles, either through direct termination or gradual marginalization. Nothing changes in terms of your day-to-day responsibilities, I said. Uncle Robert continues as president and general manager, with full authority over sales, service, and customer relations. Michael continues managing the finance and insurance departments. Jessica continues handling marketing and customer events. I paused to make sure everyone understood that the partnership was designed to enhance rather than replace existing family involvement. The difference is that you'll have access to resources and expertise that will make you more effective in your current roles, I continued. Better systems, better training, better support, and better opportunities for professional development. Plus, as the business grows and becomes more profitable, everyone's compensation will increase accordingly. David had prepared detailed job descriptions that showed how each family member's responsibilities would evolve as Rodriguez Auto Group modernized its operations. Rather than reducing their authority, the partnership would give them tools and resources that would make them more successful in their existing roles. Think of it this way, I said. You're already good at what you do. The partnership with Chen Strategic Holdings is going to make you great at what you do by giving you access to technology and expertise that your competitors don't have. The conversation continued for another hour, with family members asking detailed questions about implementation timelines, operational changes, and financial projections. But the tone of the discussion had fundamentally shifted from the shock and confusion of the initial revelation to serious business planning between strategic partners. David fielded technical questions about the customer relationship management system. I explained the competitive advantages of the electric vehicle partnerships. Uncle Robert provided insights about local market conditions and customer preferences that would influence the modernization strategy. For the first time in 8 years, I was participating in a Rodriguez family business discussion as an equal partner rather than a tolerated observer. The difference was profound, not just in terms of how they were treating me, but in how I felt about my role in the family dynamic. By the time we finished reviewing all the partnership documents, it was nearly noon. The traditional family breakfast had evolved into a comprehensive strategic planning session that established the foundation for Rodriguez Auto Group's transformation into a modern automotive retail operation. "I think we should schedule a formal kickoff meeting for next week," Uncle Robert suggested, "with all department managers and key staff members. They need to understand what changes are coming and how the modernization process will affect their daily responsibilities." "Absolutely," I agreed. "David can coordinate with your management team to develop a comprehensive communication strategy that addresses employee concerns and maintains morale throughout the transition." It was a practical suggestion, but it also represented something more significant. Uncle Robert was seeking my input on operational decisions and treating my recommendations as strategic guidance rather than unwelcome interference. "Sarah," Michael said as we gathered our materials to leave, "I know this is a business partnership, but I want you to know that I'm proud of what you've built. I'm sorry it took something this dramatic for me to really understand what you've been accomplishing." His acknowledgement was genuine, and it addressed something that had been bothering me throughout the morning. The success of the acquisition was professionally satisfying, but the personal vindication was more complex than I had anticipated. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot to me." Linda approached as we were preparing to leave, her expression serious but not unkind. "Sarah, I hope you'll be patient with us as we adjust to this new dynamic," she said. "We're going to need time to learn how to be worthy of the kind of strategic partnership you're offering." It was an unexpectedly gracious comment from someone who had spent years making me feel like I was the one who needed to prove my worthiness. "We're family," I replied. "That's not changing, regardless of business arrangements." But as we left the dining room and walked through the Phoenician's elegant lobby, I knew that everything had changed. The woman who had arrived at yesterday's dinner as the poor relative who brought homemade dessert was leaving as the strategic business leader who controlled the family's financial future. The transformation was complete, but the real work was just beginning. Modernizing Rodriguez Auto Group would require months of intensive planning, system implementation, and change management. But for the first time in 8 years, I would be doing that work as a respected partner rather than an invisible observer. The invisible woman had finally become impossible to ignore, and the Rodriguez family was about to discover exactly what strategic business leadership looked like when it was executed with precision, patience, and absolute determination to succeed. 6 months later, I stood in the showroom of the newly renovated Rodriguez Auto Group flagship location in Scottsdale, watching Michael demonstrate the features of a Lucid AirDream Edition to a customer who had driven down from Flagstaff specifically to experience what automotive journalists were calling the most technologically advanced luxury car buying experience in the Southwest. The transformation had been even more dramatic than my most optimistic projections. Revenue was up 47% from the same period the previous year. Customer satisfaction scores had reached the 95th percentile nationally. Most importantly, the Rodriguez family had evolved from reluctant partners to enthusiastic advocates for the modernization strategy that was reshaping their entire industry presence. The customer Michael was working with, a retired tech executive from Silicon Valley who had relocated to Arizona for the climate, was experiencing the kind of personalized service that traditional dealerships had always provided, but enhanced with technology integration that made Tesla's direct sales model look primitive by comparison. The vehicle's AI assistant can be customized to your driving preferences and integrated with your home automation systems, Michael explained, demonstrating features on a tablet that provided real-time vehicle data and scheduling coordination. But unlike Tesla's service model, Rodriguez Auto Group provides dedicated relationship management, so you'll always work with the same service advisor who understands your specific needs and preferences. It was exactly the kind of value proposition that I had envisioned when structuring the partnership with Chen Strategic Holdings. Traditional relationship management enhanced with cutting-edge technology, creating customer experiences that neither pure technology companies nor traditional dealers could replicate independently. The showroom itself represented everything that Rodriguez Auto Group had become under the strategic partnership. Clean, modern design that showcased both luxury traditional vehicles and state-of-the-art electric cars. Interactive displays that allowed customers to configure options, calculate financing, and schedule service appointments. Comfortable seating areas where customers could work or relax while their vehicles were being serviced. But the most significant change wasn't visible in the physical space. It was the confidence and competence that every Rodriguez family member now brought to their work. They had evolved from people who were defensive about their traditional approach to people who were proud of their innovative integration of relationship management and technological sophistication. Uncle Robert had embraced the role of industry thought leader, speaking at automotive conferences about successful family business, modernization, and the competitive advantages of combining legacy customer relationships with advanced operational systems. His presentations drew standing ovations from audiences of dealers who were struggling with the same challenges that Rodriguez Auto Group had solved through strategic partnership. Jessica had discovered a talent for digital marketing that surprised everyone, including herself. The customer acquisition campaigns she developed using advanced analytics and targeted social media advertising had generated over $15 million in new business during the first 6 months of implementation. Her work was being studied by marketing professionals across the automotive industry. Even Aunt Patricia had found a meaningful role in the transformed business. Her natural talent for relationship management made her exceptionally effective at managing the concierge services that Rodriguez Auto Group now offered to high-net-worth customers. Private vehicle delivery, exclusive preview events, and personalized customer experiences that generated premium pricing and exceptional loyalty. But the most profound transformation was in my relationship with Michael, the man who had spent 8 years assuming his wife was playing with computers as a hobby, now sought my strategic input on everything from career decisions to investment opportunities. Our marriage had evolved from a relationship where I felt invisible to a genuine partnership where my expertise was valued and my judgment was trusted. "Sarah," he said, approaching me after completing the vehicle demonstration. "The customer wants to discuss fleet purchasing for his consulting firm. Should I connect him with our commercial sales team, or would you prefer to handle this personally?" It was a small moment, but it represented everything that had changed. Michael was asking for my strategic guidance because he understood that my business expertise was an asset to the family operation, not a threat to his authority or competence. "Let's handle it together," I suggested. "You know his personal preferences, and I can structure the fleet pricing and financing options. He'll get better service from both of us than either of us could provide independently." The customer, Dr. Andrew Chen, no relation despite the shared surname, was exactly the kind of client that validated the strategic direction we had taken with Rodriguez Auto Group. Successful, sophisticated, and interested in both cutting-edge technology and exceptional service experiences. "I've been researching luxury electric vehicles for 6 months, Dr. Chen explained as we moved to the private consultation area. And frankly, I was prepared to order directly from Tesla until my neighbor mentioned the customer experience he had here. He said you somehow managed to combine the best aspects of traditional luxury service with technology integration that Tesla can't match. It was exactly the kind of testimonial that demonstrated why the Rodriguez Auto Group modernization strategy was succeeding. We weren't trying to replicate Tesla's approach or compete directly with their technology focus. Instead, we were offering something that Tesla couldn't provide: the combination of cutting-edge vehicles with relationship management and service experiences that technology companies couldn't replicate. The difference, I explained, is that we've invested in technology to enhance human relationships rather than replace them. Dr. Chen will always work with the same sales advisor, the same service coordinator, and the same customer relationship manager. But all of those interactions are supported by systems that track his preferences, anticipate his needs, and coordinate scheduling across multiple touchpoints. Michael pulled up Dr. Chen's preliminary customer profile on his tablet, showing how the integrated customer relationship management system had already captured information about his driving patterns, service preferences, and fleet requirements based on their initial consultation. For fleet purchasing, Michael continued, we can coordinate delivery schedules, maintenance planning, and upgrade timing across all vehicles in a way that minimizes disruption to your business operations. Plus, our commercial financing options include flexible terms that can be structured to optimize your tax advantages. Dr. Chen was clearly impressed by the combination of personal attention and systematic efficiency. This is exactly what I was hoping to find, he said. Tesla's direct sales model feels impersonal, and traditional luxury dealers don't understand electric vehicle technology well enough to provide meaningful guidance. Over the next 2 hours, we structured a fleet purchase agreement for 12 vehicles, including delivery coordination, comprehensive service packages, and a long-term relationship management plan that would ensure optimal performance and customer satisfaction. The total transaction value exceeded $800,000, making it one of the largest single sales in Rodriguez Auto Group's history. But more importantly, Dr. Chen's enthusiasm for the customer experience led to referrals that generated another $2 million in sales over the following 3 months. He had become exactly the kind of brand ambassador that sustainable business growth depends on. A satisfied customer who actively promoted Rodriguez Auto Group to his professional and social networks. After Dr. Chen left to schedule his fleet delivery, Michael and I walked through the service area where the modernization was equally evident. Advanced diagnostic equipment, streamlined workflow management, and customer communication systems that provided real-time updates on service progress and completion estimates. You know what's interesting? Michael said as we watched service technicians working with efficiency and precision that would have been impossible under the old manual scheduling system. 6 months ago, I thought technology was going to make our business less personal. But what actually happened was that technology freed us up to be more personal with customers because we're not wasting time on administrative tasks and scheduling coordination. It was an astute observation that captured something fundamental about successful business modernization. Technology wasn't replacing human relationships. It was eliminating the inefficiencies that prevented human relationships from reaching their full potential. That's exactly right, I agreed. The goal was never to automate customer service, but to automate everything that wasn't customer service, so that our people could focus entirely on creating exceptional experiences. The results were evident in every metric that mattered. Customer satisfaction scores had improved dramatically because service advisors could spend more time understanding customer needs and less time managing paperwork. Sales conversion rates had increased because sales professionals could focus on relationship building rather than inventory management. Employee satisfaction had improved because people were doing more meaningful work and less routine administrative tasks. But the most significant transformation was cultural. Rodriguez Auto Group had evolved from a family business that was defensive about its traditional approach to a family business that was confident about its innovative approach. They had maintained everything that made them special while adding capabilities that made them superior to larger, more technologically focused competitors. That evening, the Rodriguez family gathered for dinner at Linda's house. But this time, the conversation was dramatically different from the stilted gatherings I had endured for 8 years. Instead of polite inquiries about my computer work, They sought my input on strategic planning, market analysis, and business development opportunities. "Sarah," Linda said over dessert, "I've been thinking about the customer experience programs you suggested for our women customers. The private shopping events and personalized vehicle consultations seem like they could be particularly successful in our market." It was a thoughtful question about business strategy from someone who had spent years treating my professional expertise as an amusing hobby. Linda had not only accepted my role as a strategic business leader, but had begun developing her own ideas about how to contribute meaningfully to the company's continued growth. "The research shows that women influence over 80% of luxury vehicle purchasing decisions," I replied. "But most dealerships still design their sales processes around traditional male buyer assumptions. Rodriguez Auto Group has an opportunity to capture significant market share by creating customer experiences that recognize how women actually research and purchase luxury vehicles." The conversation continued for over an hour, with family members contributing insights about customer preferences, market opportunities, and operational improvements. For the first time in our relationship, I felt like I was participating in a genuine strategic planning session rather than tolerating a social obligation. Uncle Robert had become particularly interested in industry leadership opportunities, leveraging Rodriguez Auto Group's successful modernization to establish relationships with manufacturers, industry associations, and regulatory agencies. "I've been invited to join the National Automobile Dealers Association's Technology Committee," he announced. "They want our input on best practices for family business modernization and electric vehicle market development." It was exactly the kind of recognition that demonstrated how completely Rodriguez Auto Group had transformed its industry reputation. Instead of being followers who were struggling to adapt to market changes, they had become leaders who were helping other dealerships navigate similar transformations. "That's a significant opportunity," I said. "Industry leadership positions create strategic advantages that extend far beyond immediate business benefits. You'll have early access to manufacturer programs, regulatory developments, and market intelligence that will help Rodriguez Auto Group stay ahead of competitive trends." Jessica had been particularly successful in developing strategic partnerships with local businesses, creating cross-promotional opportunities that generated new customer relationships while providing added value to existing clients. "The partnership with the Scottsdale Resort has been incredibly successful," she reported. "We've provided luxury vehicle services for over 200 of their high-end guests, and 15 of them have become long-term customers. Plus, the resort is recommending Rodriguez Auto Group to their corporate clients who need fleet services." It was innovative thinking that demonstrated how traditional relationship management could be enhanced through strategic business development. Jessica had identified opportunities that generated revenue while strengthening the company's position in the luxury market. But the most meaningful change was in how the family treated each other. The competitiveness and subtle cruelty that had characterized previous gatherings had been replaced by genuine collaboration and mutual respect. Success had created an environment where everyone could contribute according to their strengths rather than competing for recognition or approval. "I want to propose something," Aunt Patricia said as we finished dessert. "I think we should establish an annual family retreat where we review business performance, discuss strategic planning, and celebrate our successes together." It was a suggestion that would have been impossible before the modernization. The Rodriguez family had never been comfortable discussing business performance because they had never been confident about their strategic direction. Now, they wanted to showcase their achievements and plan for continued growth. "I think that's an excellent idea," I replied. "We could combine strategic planning with recognition of individual contributions and team-building activities that strengthen both business and family relationships." The conversation concluded with plans for the retreat, including presentations by each family member about their areas of responsibility and group discussions about expansion opportunities and market development strategies. As Michael and I drove home that evening through the desert landscape that had become genuinely familiar, rather than merely tolerated, I reflected on the completeness of the transformation we had achieved together. Rodriguez Auto Group had evolved from a traditional family business struggling with modernization challenges to an industry leader that other dealerships studied and emulated. The financial results exceeded all projections, but more importantly, the cultural transformation had created sustainable competitive advantages that would continue generating benefits for years. "You know what I realized tonight?" Michael said as we pulled into our driveway. "For the first time since we got married, I feel like we're genuine partners in every aspect of our relationship. Business partners, life partners, strategic partners." It was an acknowledgement that addressed something that had been missing from our marriage for years. I had always been Michael's wife, but I had never been his equal partner. The success of the Rodriguez Auto Group acquisition had changed that dynamic permanently. "I realized something too," I replied. "I spent years wanting the Rodriguez family to see me as worthy of respect, but what I actually needed was to see myself as someone who didn't require their approval to be successful." The transformation had been as much about personal growth as professional achievement. I had discovered that the most important recognition comes from your own understanding of your capabilities and accomplishments, not from other people's acknowledgement of your worth. Over the following months, Rodriguez Auto Group continued exceeding performance projections. The electric vehicle partnerships generated revenue streams that established the company as the premier destination for luxury sustainable transportation in the Southwest. The customer relationship management systems created loyalty and referral patterns that reduced marketing costs while increasing transaction values. But the most significant outcome was the example we had created for other family businesses facing similar modernization challenges. Uncle Robert's presentations at industry conferences generated consulting opportunities for Chen Strategic Holdings, creating a new revenue stream focused on helping traditional businesses navigate digital transformation while preserving family ownership and management structures. The Rodriguez family had become advocates for strategic partnerships that enhanced rather than threatened family business traditions. Their success demonstrated that modernization didn't require sacrificing the relationship management and customer service excellence that made family businesses special. 6 months after the acquisition, I received a letter from Dr. Chen, the customer who had purchased the 12-vehicle fleet for his consulting firm. He had recommended Rodriguez Auto Group to colleagues across multiple industries, generating over $5 million in additional revenue. But the letter wasn't about business results, it was about customer experience. "I've purchased luxury vehicles from dealerships across the country," Dr. Chen wrote, "but I've never experienced the combination of personal attention, technical expertise, and systematic efficiency that Rodriguez Auto Group provides. You've somehow created something that's both cutting-edge and traditional, both innovative and reliable." It was exactly the kind of recognition that validated the strategic approach we had taken. Rodriguez Auto Group hadn't chosen between traditional relationship management and modern technology integration. We had combined both approaches to create customer experiences that neither pure technology companies nor traditional dealerships could replicate. The success of the Rodriguez Auto Group transformation established Chen Strategic Holdings as a recognized leader in family business modernization. We began receiving acquisition opportunities from traditional businesses across multiple industries, all seeking strategic partnerships that would preserve family ownership while providing access to the capital and expertise necessary for sustainable growth. But more importantly, the experience had taught me something fundamental about strategic business leadership. The most successful transformations aren't about replacing what works with something different, but about enhancing what works, with capabilities that make it even more effective. Rodriguez Auto Group hadn't abandoned the relationship management and customer service excellence that made them successful. Instead, they had enhanced those strengths with technology integration and operational efficiency that made them unbeatable in their market. The invisible woman who had spent 8 years being dismissed as Michael's charity case wife had become a strategic business leader whose expertise was sought by companies across multiple industries. But more importantly, I had discovered that the most meaningful success comes from creating value for other people, not from proving your worth to people who were never capable of recognizing it. The Rodriguez family had learned to see me as a strategic partner because I had learned to see myself as someone whose capabilities and judgment deserved respect, regardless of other people's acknowledgement. 2 years after the acquisition, Rodriguez Auto Group was recognized as the fastest-growing luxury dealership network in the Southwest, with expansion plans that would establish locations in Colorado and Utah. The family business that had been struggling with modernization challenges had become a model for successful integration of traditional values and innovative business practices. The transformation was complete, but the real success wasn't measured in revenue growth or market share expansion. It was measured in the genuine respect and collaboration that now characterized every interaction between family members who had learned to value each other's contributions rather than competing for recognition. I had started this journey wanting to prove that I deserved a seat at the Rodriguez family table. I finished it understanding that I had never needed their permission to build my own table, and that the most important recognition comes from creating value for people who genuinely appreciate your contributions. The poor relative who brought homemade dessert had become the strategic business leader who transformed a family enterprise into an industry benchmark. But more importantly, the invisible woman had learned to see herself clearly, and that clarity had made her impossible for anyone else to overlook. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.